Hi everyone, I'm coming on today because I want to share on a hot topic. It's summer, and the seasons awaken different things in us. So I want to bring forward some information on archetypal energies, personality complexes, and human sexuality, like our unique, you know, flavor of sexuality. And the reason why I'm bringing this forward, this is really for my hardcore truthers that have been doing the work diligently for some years now. And this layer, that every season has its own set of principles by which we can attune to, and it allows us to access different parts of self. Well, summer in particular really allows us access to that fifth house, to our sexuality, to our life force, right? Everything is flowing, everything is growing, and life force is just pouring forth. And so that gives us a direct connection to our own life force, which is the stream upon which our sexuality is interwoven. And this is going to bring us, I'm providing a process, okay? I'm providing a process in this short video or audio on how to access your archetypal energies, how to work with them. I'm talking about sexual archetypal energies. And I'll preface this by saying that if anyone listens to this video and, has had severe trauma or has severe complexes, like really strong complexes around their sexuality and neuroses, I definitely recommend doing work with a professional around these things. Whoever that professional is for you, that is really up to you to decide. But what I'm bringing forth is something for people who might have had a little bit of trauma. I mean, there's so many people that have, but really it's just about analyzing your sexual archetypes and allowing that to bring forth information to you, to deepen your process, your personal development, to understand yourself more, and actually to help you unblock these personality complexes, right, that you might have layered up on top of your core essence that get you to act certain ways in the world, that are part of the false self, that aren't your true self, your true essence shining through. And when we go through these different phases of the alchemical process, for example, they're meant to break down the false self, right? The false ego, the conditioned ego, the personality complexes that developed, because of the conditioning or due to protecting yourself, from an environment. The world we live in comes with comes in with many influences that we have to navigate through as we develop. And these all cause personality complexes that we then realize later on in life have nothing to do with who we truly are and our core essence. So I'm going to be talking about tapping into these archetypes, how to tap into them and use them for your own personal development. So I'm going to start with just the observer's view on your sexuality. So many people might it's intrinsically part of who we are. It does connect to our personality, but people might not necessarily feel a need to analyze why they have a tendency to be a certain way when it comes to their sexuality, whereas other people, especially doing personal development work, really have an interest in breaking everything down and, you know, understanding the mechanisms behind why they do the things they do. So this is going to speak to those people. And the archetypal energy work started when I found this video. I really enjoyed doing practices on tapping into the subconscious mind. And I've been doing them for over a decade now. And, you know, they give you clues into what is happening within the unconscious. And you know, it's the unconscious that is controlling to a large degree our behaviors in, you know, conscious waking life. And so tapping into these realms for me has been paramount in breaking down walls and barriers around my authentic self. And so I started doing a practice regarding with painting that I won't get into and describe, but if you're really interested in it, let me know and I'll post the video. But basically, it started that way. And then, you know, all of this conversation, there's a lot of people that are, you know, either as this energy, this sexual life force energy awakens, people are partnering up, you know, people that might have been single during the winter, people that have been hiding, especially in the northern hemispheres, you know, everybody's covered up, and then spring and summer comes and, you know, everybody's just like taking off their clothes and basking in the sun, and, you know, all of these things can awaken within the psyche. And so a lot of people are partnering up, coupling up, and discussing their sexuality more. So as these conversations have been taking place, there's kind of this theme, you know, that's been growing. And I've been looking at different ways, because I like to build processes on how to, you know, how to analyze our behaviors to get to these deeper layers and into our archetypal selves and our core essence. And so the theme has been arising around, you know, either blocks that people have where they feel like, you know, that energy has trouble awakening, or no desire at all, right? Like everyone else around them is like, woo, you know, like really feeling this energy awaken. And, you know, some people are just not feeling it all. And then that question becomes, why am I not feeling that energy awaken within me when life is awakening all around me? And then there's other people who are feeling the energy and kind of, you know, instead of being in the blocks or the, you know, the over analyzing, just kind of like in that impulsive forward movement of, you know, just really diving into to the ocean, you know, to go swimming, and not really paying attention to what might be arising in terms of, you know, material that can be used for personal development. So, so there's a few things coming up. We all have at our core within our sexuality, you know, it depends on what kind of, you know, psychologists you've studied. But our sexuality, in my opinion, does develop at a very young age, and it goes through these very unconscious stages of development, you know, from 0 to 7, related to our basic needs and whether they were met and how they were met, and then that forms the base layer of our sexuality. And then after that, things keep on building, and experiences and events and people connected to not so much our primary needs, but you know, more related to our sexual needs and desires, creates the other foundation. So whatever experiences we have after that, you know, will reflect and kind of weave into our sexuality until we reach a certain age, you know, where we have a good sense of our sexuality, like we've already had time for all these things to develop, and we just all naturally have personal preferences when it comes to the ways in which we express our sexuality and the ways in which we like to receive that from another person. And so the archetypal energy is very unconscious. So I believe it does tap into the 0 to 7 years of age when, our needs, our basic needs are being met, and whatever experiences we've had within that age group. So a lot of our preferences have to do with, things that were happening before we had a conscious mind to analyze and observe them. So it can get kind of tricky. It's really this psychological relationship with the parents or the caregivers or the people around us, and what sort of relationship was developed with them, how they made us feel, right, in relation to these primary needs, whether they're being fulfilled or not, and how they're being fulfilled. That creates this layer within our unconscious mind that is an archetypal energy that we tap into later on in life through our sexuality. So the process itself is to analyze, to first, observe, like simply observe. What is it that turns me on? What is it that, what are the likes and dislikes, right? Regarding your sexual partner, your husband, your wife, whoever that person is. What are the likes and dislikes that you have regarding how you like, sex and intercourse and foreplay and all that stuff? Looking at where your preferences are, right? Where your predispositions are, where your kinks are, right? And what sort of general direction does it go in for you? So you first have to just kind of sit back and observe, right? Not a lot of people even just pay attention to that. And you're looking at you want to look at your deepest fantasies, like the fantasies that activate that libido energy the most in you, that activate the life force energy the most in you. And you want to ask yourself, what that is. What archetypal energy does that connect to? So you obviously have, a lot of different ways to, a lot of different things that this could be for you. For some, and again, I need to repeat, like, if you are observing this, these behaviors within yourself, these preferences within yourself, and they dabble into things that are really unhealthy for the body, right? Unhealthy for the mind and the soul, then you know that you need to do deeper work with a professional on this stuff, right? Because I'm going to bring in the element of traumas. Of course, if you've had some form of sexual trauma throughout your life, often what occurs is that gets embedded into your sexuality and the archetypal energy that you connect with, right? That your sexuality expresses itself through. And you can be attracted to things that mirror your trauma, right? So I've seen this quite often where people, be quite frustrated because what they're attracted to are similar events that played out during a traumatic event, right? So it's not what they truly, how they want to experience their sexuality. They want to experience their sexuality in like a kind of pure sensual tantric way and just be present in the moment, which I think ultimately is what everybody is trying to get at, is to be present, with feeling, with the body, with the senses. But these traumatic events can leave imprints in the psyche that are connected directly to the person's sexuality. So they will only get turned on when those specific imprints are reactivated, right? By playing them out, role playing with their partners. And then, sometimes that's not possible. The partner isn't into playing out those, that role playing. And so they feel kind of guilt and shame around it, and their sexuality wants to go there because that's where they get the most activated. But then they feel shame because they're not allowed to, express them and get to that place within themselves to just be present with what that brings up for them, because that's often how you overcome the trauma. So, there's a lot of people that are dealing with that stuff. And then it becomes like, if the less and less that they can tap into and play out that energy with in a safe environment with a loved one, they repress, and it becomes like a taboo, right? It just grows larger and larger and larger, like a shadow, becomes a shadow archetype. And they are no longer able to transcend it. So I believe I went back and forth on this for people that I've been speaking with about this stuff. Yeah, I've gone back and forth on the idea of whether, it just gets embedded into your sexuality, whatever is, during those phases from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and that's it. You can't really decouple, those imprints from just pure presence. But I think you can. I sway a little bit. I think really, it's just because it takes time and it's difficult to address these issues. So they can go on for years and years where you're trying to work with your sexuality, and it could be very challenging. You feel like that trigger, that thing that activates, never really goes away. But I'm starting to believe that it does. It's just that it takes time. And this could be for people that don't have trauma, right? It could just be some event that really left an imprint in their mind during a libido phase of their sexual development. Not a libido phase, a potent phase of their sexual development, and they're just they're needing to play out certain roles, and they can't really understand why, and it's embarrassing for them, or it's just bizarre. So they kind of stay closed off regarding their sexuality because they don't understand where that's coming from and what that is, and they don't know if they don't understand if they could transcend it or not. And then on the flip side, you have people who have really strong imprints and really powerful archetypal energies that then they become the archetypal shadow by never addressing any of them, right? And it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, not seeing that it's an unhealthy behavior, right? They're like, that's just who I am. That's just that's just what my sexuality is. And I'm not going to address, maybe where these things came from that become unhealthy. I'm sure you guys can imagine a bunch of situations where that takes place. And so, I think this is, it's quite a big topic that we can have many discussions about. But right now, just to bring forward this process is to look at, the things that activate you, right? The ideas, concepts, fantasies that activate that energy the most, what they are, and then look to that archetypal energy, study that archetype. It could be the saboteur, it could be the victim, right? The damsel in distress. It could be the controller, right? The controlling one. It could be the prostitute archetype. There's a lot of different archetypes out there, and you have to discover the one that it connects to you the most in terms of what activates you the most. And then once you find out what that archetypal energy is, you know what you're dealing with in terms of what's in your unconscious mind, right? And so it gets really interesting because for example, someone who is dealing with an archetypal energy that's very controlling. They need to constantly be in control of others during sexual activity, and it's like the libido or the activation just stops if their partner controls the act in any way. These people might have experienced very controlling parents, right, when it came to how they were raised, and during how their needs were met. We're in it was a very controlled environment, and so how that plays out in terms of personality complexes, your sexuality is a part of your personality. So the personality complex would be the controller, and how that limits the person is looking at themes in their life where either they lack control, like they don't have the ability to step up and create a structure in their life where there is more control of their daily routines, their health practices, their work management, or it could be so either a lack of control or too much control, too rigid, right? No room for enjoyment, no room for fun, right? Or for spontaneity, for the flow of the universe, right? And just when you have a rigid mind, there's all sorts of impediments that could prevent relationships from developing, work relationships, family, friends, right? Because people feel that controlling energy. The saboteur, for example, might be someone who experiences difficulties when it comes to pleasure and enjoyment during the sexual act. So they might be someone who just sabotages their own sexual experience. So they just can't get activated, right? It just takes forever for them to allow themselves to feel that energy, right? Or they will start to feel that energy, but then it stops and they're not able to continue. So these people have to look again at the saboteur. You study the saboteur archetype, and then you look to see. You don't even have to go back into your childhood to look to see, to where this stems. That's just if you really want to understand the full scope of it. But I find it helpful, to connect it to childhood, because a lot of times there's fear around these archetypal energies. Like people will have kind of a split, a fractured self, a fractured sexuality, because they, when it's connected to these unconscious archetypes, it's like they're attracted to things that they're sort of ashamed of, or they feel some sort of guilt around. And, that causes blocks in the life force energy moving through them, which is their creative force. Ultimately, life force energy, sexual energy, is the creative force. It is the creative impulse within you. So if you have any forms of blocks, any blocks within your sexuality and that expression, then, or an addiction, an overabundance, it causes issues in your life, because the life force flows through you creates your life. It creates your entire life. So a lot of people have this kind of, they like what they like, but they are, they don't like that they like the things that they like. They're kind of ashamed of them, or they just don't understand them, and they find, that's annoying. And so they won't engage with these archetypal energies because they're just, they're frustrated by them. And a lot of people have these issues. It's like they can only fully enjoy themselves sexually unless, they're in certain positions in certain scenarios, and it's frustrating for them because they just want to have presence. They just want to be in the sensual experience of the body, right? And enjoying themselves, not having to, have these mental layers, these imprints controlling the experience. So, another archetypal energy could be the prostitute, and then looking at the ways in which that person prostitutes themselves out, into the world, either by saying yes when they mean no, doing things only in accordance with the social norm, right? Taking on work or other things that they have no connection to soul to, where they betray themselves on that soul level is the prostitute archetype. So this would fall also into, a sexuality where you feel like you have to do things that you actually don't enjoy, right? Or that you don't feel is healthy. So there's a lot of different archetypes to work with. And I think there are different phases to this, but definitely resistance, doesn't allow for personal development on these levels. So if there's a strong sense of resistance, just observe what it is that activates you. Once you've observed it, you can identify and label it. Once you've identified and labeled it, then you can study, you can do your research and study that archetypal energy and how it plays out in the world, what it means in relation to the things you do and don't do in the world, right? That how that archetypal energy is either preventing you from being your core, your true essence in the world, right? Or how it might be helping you. Because there's a flip side to this, right? And it's not all negative. When we work with our archetypal energies and we actually can transcend them, and then we can develop really healthy psyches and connections to new archetypes within the psyche that have, that are in a sense have ascended and and that are just as powerful. But then, those archetypes will fuel and channel through our life force, through the sexuality, through our personality to create the lives that we want to live. Because anything that we're looking at in terms of our life, where we feel like we have blocks, that will be mirrored in our sexuality. Right? So it's a focused way, to address larger issues when it comes to our behaviors, our blocks, and how to transcend them. Right? So I wanted to just bring this forth. I think it's really powerful, for the month of July, August. All of these energies are waking up, whether we've been married for 25 years. And, often a lot of that work doesn't get done. There's a lot of couples that lose connection with their own sexuality after being married for so long. So this work is also, an invitation for people who have been in relationships for a really long time to, to go to use the blocks and whatever's coming up to finally tap into that unconscious archetypal energy, to transcend it, to then bring forward some fresh life force into your life, into your relationship. And it's just, good all around for anybody out there that's into, their own psycho-spiritual development and is constantly, doing the work in a playful manner, not in a like, oh, I got to do this. It's it's like hard work, and I'm gonna be depressed and have to analyze all this stuff. It's really supposed to be. I think once we get out of the dark night of the soul, it does become a lifestyle, and we can do this work by integrating. We're integrating it, and when we integrate it, we see the changes in our lives. And because we see the changes in our lives, it doesn't become hard work, right? It doesn't become like an endless task of having to do inner work. It just becomes who you are. So, yeah, I'm wishing everybody a really awesome July and August, tapping into these juicy creative energies, the life force, the beauty that's, blooming all around us, and showing us and teaching us, how to connect with that energy within ourselves properly and create that clear channel, to also help unblock, whatever energies are stuck in relation to projects that we want to bring forth, work, right? Success that we're looking to obtain with whatever it is we're studying, doing, or creating. So, thanks for listening, and if you want to reach me, you can at inspiringplayfulevolution.com. I have a bunch of service offerings up there, and I hope to hear from you soon. All right.